The PlayStation 4 has had quite the lineup in 2018 already, and a big part of that lineup included several open world games. And that's what we'll be covering in this video. Actually, we'll be ranking every open world game released in 2018 thus far on the PlayStation 4 from bottom to top. Yes, there have already been 8 pretty significant open world titles, not all of them have turned out great, and we'll be ranking them from the least rated to the highest rated on Metacritic, and I'll throw in my own personal opinions, of course, as well. We've got 9 games to go over, so let's get right into this with the worst open world game. This might not come as a shock to a lot of you guys. Metal Gear Survive rated at a 60. Honestly speaking, 60 is probably a little bit high for Metal Gear Survive, and if you played the game, you probably agree with me. Metal Gear Survive is not your traditional Metal Gear game. You always need to be online, it's got a heavy influence on microtransactions, and the game obviously didn't have the influence of Hideo Kojima. A very generic game, a lot of copy and paste from Metal Gear Solid 5, and yes, while it was released at a budget price of $39.99, even that was a little bit high, and as I mentioned, the 60 Metacritic score to me is a little bit on the high side. Dynasty Warriors 9 at a 65. Now this one was a little bit disappointing to me personally because I was actually really excited for Dynasty Warriors 9. I thought that this was going to be the game to transcend Dynasty Warriors from its niche audience into not becoming the biggest franchise on the planet, but becoming a notable franchise that a lot of gamers know about, and that was because Dynasty Warriors 9 was making a gigantic shift from Dynasty Warriors 8, and that was the major issue with the Dynasty Warriors titles. They're a lot of the same, but Dynasty Warriors 9 was actually changing things up, obviously, by becoming an open world game and transitioning the Dynasty Warriors gameplay into that. Unfortunately, this is a case where the open world game does not improve the game, rather it's probably a hindrance. If you played the Dynasty Warriors games in the past, that gameplay is still there, but is that really a good thing? To those that enjoy it, obviously it is, but that open world game design also falters quite a bit. It's quite barren. There's definitely some standout elements to Dynasty Warriors 9, but for me to think that this was going to be the Dynasty Warriors game to really take the franchise to the next level, I was very wrong about that, and the 65 it has on Metacritic is probably warranted. The MMO TERA is sitting at a 69. Now, really speaking, TERA on the PlayStation 4 having a 69 probably is a good thing. That's not an all too bad score because if you think about it, TERA was an MMO released all the way back in, I believe, 2012. The fact that it released on the PlayStation 4 in 2018 and was still able to make somewhat of an impact, hey, there's something to be said for that alone. The only issue with TERA is that it is a little bit dated of an experience, and if the PlayStation 4 didn't have a solid lineup of MMOs already, maybe this game would become a bigger fixture, but considering we have Final Fantasy XIV, we have Elder Scrolls Online, TERA really falters from those titles quite a bit, but hey, TERA has the fact that it's free to play going for it, so you have nothing to lose by giving the game a chance, and I would recommend you to do so because the action-based combat is still a lot of fun. Next up, Assassin's Creed Rogue Remastered is sitting at a 71. This is a game that I personally think is a little bit underrated. Assassin's Creed Rogue released back in 2014 on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, and if you know your gaming timeline, you would know that's after the release of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Well, 2014 actually brought with it 2 Assassin's Creed games. Rogue was released on last generation platforms while Unity was released on current gen platforms. Most gamers checked out Unity and were sorely disappointed, and hardly anyone checked out Assassin's Creed Rogue, and that's a shame because that was the better game. AC Rogue was finally ported to the PlayStation 4 earlier this year, and as far as ports go, it's nothing amazing. It's still running at 30 frames per second, which in my opinion is absolutely inexcusable, but considering that it did release at a budget $29.99 price point, I'm not justifying 30 frames per second, but it is something to consider. The game itself is quite good, a lot of resemblance to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which a lot would consider their favorite Assassin's Creed game, maybe behind AC2. There's a debate to be had there. And Assassin's Creed Rogue also has a very interesting story, one of the more interesting in the entire franchise, and that says quite a bit. If you're a fan of the older Assassin's Creed titles, I'm talking prior to AC Origins because that gameplay is still intact, give AC Rogue Remastered a shot. Maybe wait for a sale when it's $14.99, that would probably be the perfect price to pick it up, but even at $29.99, there's a decent amount of gameplay here, and that 71, again, I think is a little bit underrated. I would personally rank it at a 75 to a 77. Next up, we have Final Fantasy XV, the Royal Edition, which is at a 74. Now, you might think Final Fantasy XV Royal Edition really isn't a new game, but you would kind of be wrong with that. Final Fantasy Royal Edition is the game we should have gotten when Final Fantasy XV was originally released. What it has on top of the original version is, of course, you get the base Final Fantasy XV game, but you get all of the Season Pass content. That includes Episode Prompto, Episode Gladius, and Episode Ignis. Those episodes are quite substantial, and they really should have been in the game from the get-go. That's not not all you get, you also get a Royal Edition update, and that adds quite a bit of content to the game as well. Of course, now you also have the Comrades mode, which has become a solid multiplayer component to the FF15 experience, and talking about all that right now made me realize just how complete of an experience FF15 has become. But don't get it twisted, the Royal Edition, as I've mentioned before, is not the complete experience. We have more content for the game coming out. Yes, there's another set of DLC content coming out, 4 episodes to be exact. So if you're not eager to get into FF15 right now, it will pay dividends to wait a little bit and then check out the game some point down the line where the super duper ultimate complete edition is out. Still, the Royal Edition is a solid investment and you are getting a ton of content for your money. Next up, and now we're at the top 3, Far Cry 5 is rated at an 81. Far Cry 5 had quite a bit of anticipation leading into it, but I think a lot of gamers saw Far Cry 5 for what it was. It wasn't going to be revolutionizing the Far Cry franchise from what we saw in Far Cry 4 and Far Cry 3, but it does take all of those elements, refines it, and makes it the best experience that we've seen in a Far Cry game thus far. And what Far Cry does really get right is the setting and the storytelling. Comparatively speaking to a lot of single-player open-world titles where the story really gets lost in the shuffle, Far Cry seems to be one of those experiences that develops a quality world, and of course there's a lot of fun to be had in these games, a lot of content to it as well. How much of that is meaningful is debatable, but the core design of the games have never been something to complain about, and if you were a fan of Far Cry 4 or Far Cry 3, you're gonna really enjoy Far Cry 5. Maybe this is one that you don't drop $60 on right away, especially considering the fact that Ubisoft games have been dropping in price so fast. You just look at Assassin's Creed Origins, that game is already readily available for $29.99, even cheaper if you're, say, a GCU member at Best Buy. Far Cry 5 is gonna get to that level very quickly. I see by the end of the summer, Far Cry 5 is down to $30 as well. You can already find the game for around $49.99, again with GCU, that's like $40, and for that price, I would say it's worth it. But if you're not super eager to play Far Cry 5, you can hold off a little bit longer. It will end up paying dividends. Still a very good open world title, and the 81 on Metacritic shows. Next up is Burnout Paradise Remastered, which is at an 82. Now, this was a game that I was very vocal about negatively because I thought the $39.99 release price was a tad bit high. And that's coming from somebody that absolutely loved Burnout Paradise back in 2008. But let me repeat that again. I loved Burnout Paradise back in 2008, and guess what? It was January of 2008 when this game was originally released. This remastering isn't anything groundbreaking, but it is a great game. However, $39.99 for a by-the-books remastering of a 10-year-old game, I don't know, that just didn't sit well with me, but luckily Burnout Paradise is another one of those games that dropped in price really quickly. Just the other day, I saw it at Best Buy for $24.99, and then if you're a GCU subscriber, you get that for $20. Now, that's a price I could get behind. In my opinion, Burnout Paradise should have been released at $29.99, and maybe you're thinking I'm making too big of a deal over $10, but hey, that's 25% of the price, and to me, that's pretty significant. But enough about the price, let's talk about the game itself, and the game itself is an absolute blast. One of the best arcade racing experiences that you're gonna have, and it's packed with content. This remastered edition does include the DLC, so you get even more content, and the game's got great music. You're gonna go through some great crashes, just a great game all around. And again, now that it is readily available for around $25, that's a price I can get behind, and you should absolutely check out Burnout Paradise. And finally, we have Shadow of the Colossus, which is at an excellent 91. Now, you might be thinking, why didn't I complain about Shadow of the Colossus like I complained about Burnout Paradise? But don't get it twisted, Shadow of the Colossus is not a remastering. Bluepoint Games went back to the drawing board and built the game ground up for the PlayStation 4. Just looking at the game right away, it looks incredible compared to the original Shadow of the Colossus or even the HD remaster that was released on the PlayStation 3. And really, the only issue with Shadow of the Colossus back on the PlayStation 2 was from the technical side of things, and now on the PlayStation 4, those handcuffs have been completely removed. And what you have still is the amazing gameplay, the amazing boss fights, the incredible atmosphere. This is without a doubt Team Ico's best games. I know some of you guys might be partial to Ico, but Shadow of the Colossus is one of those games that is looked at as one of the best games of all time, and that is not hyperbole. It is just a tremendous experience, and whether you've never played the game or you just want to revisit it, the PlayStation 4 version is a legitimate system seller and a must-own title for anyone who has the console. So that concludes this video. We have just ranked every open world title that's been released on the PlayStation 4 in 2018 thus far. We already had 9 pretty significant open world games, and of course for the rest of the year we've got a lot more. Spider-Man, Red Dead Redemption 2, we've got a semi-open world game in Vampire releasing next month. A lot more great ones I'm sure will be announced in due time. That's gonna conclude this video. Of course, sound off with your thoughts in the comment section down below, and thank you for watching, and goodbye.